Good morning. It's a special day. God works in very kind ways. I wouldn't say mysterious, I would say kind. In my life is full of those, and uh, really God made the conversation with Dr. Chopra happen. I also want to use this. All of you are special because you're invitees or sought out an invite, and the team got you in. It is not a commercial event. We have no sponsors. We have no paid participants. It's an event on consciousness. Okay, and I think he's a master of consciousness. He doesn't like the term New Age Guru, and those are you know titles in this book. He talks about how can you do away with ego. I would like to take everyone's name, but I would fail in my duty if I wouldn't acknowledge the presence of Mr. Dr. K.J. Alphonse, who's a celebrated bureaucrat, a former tourism minister, and most importantly, an author. His book is also coming out in November. 52 weeks, the winning formula for life. Mr. Java, who's the chairman of Daikin India, is also on the global board of Daikin in Japan. He's here. Uh, Dr. Harsh Mahajan is here. Again, I don't have to introduce Dr. Mahajan. Mr. Sunil Chauhan, who's the founder of Ingri, formerly the founder of Fab Cafe, because he talks about food as integrative part of health. Uh, Mr. Rabindranath, who's our CEO of our healthcare well-being, all the guests that Dr. Chopra has invited, the Chopra Foundation has invited. Uh, First of all, let me show a picture. Uh, Dr. Chopra has been in India for the last 5 days, 3 days, 3 days. Uh, you found time to go to your school? Last, last visit, not this.
Not this.
You never see. So most of you know that Dr. Deepak Chopra grew up in Delhi. He studied in Delhi. Of course, his father was a doctor. He was in Pune too. He went to St. Columbus, which is not very far from here. How did it feel to go back to your school?
It looked the same. The building looked the same. Obviously, when you see a relic, for me it's now a relic in a way, it evokes memories. And then, of course, the next question is, where are memories? Which is the hard problem of consciousness. So I was thinking about that.
Beautiful. Day before yesterday, Mr. Ponacha and Dr. Chopra, you were at AIIMS. It was the World Mental Health Day. And we have another photo. He visited his dorm at AIIMS. This is a place where you lived while you were studying.
This is hostel number 2. I was in room number 2. I spent 5 years in this building. And then, of course, the institute has grown enormously as well, but it brought back some very wonderful memories.
One of those memories.
Anatomy class, getting bamboozled by the idea that we are anatomical beings. But it was great, When I was there, there were some very luminaries that I thought of as luminaries. Dr. Ramalinga Swami, Dr. Beg. As I don't know if you know that the All India Institute was the brainchild of Pandit Nehru. So I was the 9th batch. And if you go back to the speeches of Mr. Nehru in the 50s, the 3 things he said, कारखाने बनाने हैं, technology करनी है, और medicine में we have to achieve. And if we do that, we lead the world. So that was the genesis, by the way, Pandit Nehru's vision, which was a 100-year vision. Most people don't recognize that. But if you read some of the literature, he said if we can capture technology, be leaders in biomedical field, and have the right factories for industry, we will lead the world. And right now, Silicon Valley is run by IIT graduates. Every medical school, most of the leading research is Indians. And of course, we've gone beyond the industrial age. We are now in the age of technology. But that was a grand vision. And actually, I think not many people give credit to Mr. Nehru for having that vision.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, because my mom, talks of Mr. Nehru as this ideal leader. And, my maternal grandfather was a professor of English in a college in Lahore, and he used to play golf in those days. And, they all used to idolize Mr. Nehru. And, when my mother tells me when he died, she cried for 2, 3 days.
I was in Delhi when he died. My father was one of his physicians, and the most interesting thing that I remember is he came in the mid-50s to inaugurate in Jabalpur, where my father was a medical doctor for the army. He was stationed there to inaugurate the first automobile factory in India. Tata Mercedes-Benz. We're interesting that, we're talking about the Tatas right now, but in the entire town of Jabalpur showed up for the inauguration. And once again, that was a very visionary lecture that he gave on collaborations globally for technology, but also for starting the automobile industry in India.
Beautiful.
That was way before ambassadors and Fiats and all this came. Shaktiman, I don't know if it's still there.
I think it's still there.
It's
It
still
used
there.
to be a couple of years back. I'm not sure. Now, coming back to why we are here. We're here to raise our consciousness. You've written 100 books, okay? Getting to 100.
Okay.
Getting 96. That's close to 100. It's like Sir Don Bradman's batting average. He didn't do 100, but he did close. If it's called 4 more runs, he'd be having. Why this book, Digital Dharma, and why now?
It's a very long answer, but we could take the entire session just talking about that. So I'll start with something that is a little deeper conversation. The number one question right now in science, there are 125 open questions in science. The number one question in science is, what's the universe made of? And you would think we know what the universe is made of, right? Gravity, force fields, electromagnetism, atoms, molecules. So why do we even ask this question? Well, it turns out that 70% of the universe is a mysterious, unknowable, I think, entity called dark energy. And it's not the energy that we normally think of, when we E is equal to mc squared. It's not that energy, not electromagnetic energy. It's the opposite of gravity. It's also called the cosmological constant. So right now, as we're sitting here, the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light. And what is expanding is the space between galaxies. So the cosmic horizon, which is the farthest the universe has expanded, is about 45 to 46 billion light years away from us. By the time light reaches us, our solar system will not exist. It will have burnt itself up into the heat death of absolute zero. That's 70% of the universe, and it's not atomic. So we are made of atoms. We can't interact with it. That leaves 30% of the universe that remains. Of that, 27% is approximately dark matter. Not dark energy, dark matter. And it's responsible for most of the gravity in the universe. So if it weren't for dark matter, planets would spiral off and disappear into intergalactic space, and you and I wouldn't be here. But what is it? We don't know, because it's not like regular matter is reserved for things like this. It's called dark matter, again, because it's not atomic. Why do we call it matter if we can't see it? We call it matter because it bends space-time in the same way as regular matter. And yet it's the dominant gravitational force. So that leaves 3% of the universe, which is atomic. out of which 99.99999% is invisible interstellar dust, which we can't see. Presumably it's hydrogen and helium, according to the mathematical constructs that we have, Big Bang and so on. So the visible universe is 0.01%, and that's 2 trillion galaxies. 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars. It's unimaginable. And uncountable trillions of planets, uncountable trillions of planets. And right now, according to the current research, the latest research, James Webb Telescope, etc., 60 billion habitable planets just in the Milky Way galaxy. 60 billion multiplied by 2 trillion, the number of habitable planets. We just had a conference in Harvard where we had astrobiologists who were convinced that there's not probability, but based on what is called a biosphere, electromagnetic forces, gravity, cosmological constants, it's certain that we have 60 billion habitable planets in the way we are, some more advanced than we are, and you multiply that by 2 trillion galaxies, our planet is not even 1 grain of sand in all the beaches, all the deserts of the world. So here we are, not even a speck of dust in the infinite universe, where we have this species having a conference, Homo sapiens, and we're trying to figure out what that is. In any case, the atomic universe is 0.01, but as everyone who's familiar with atoms, they're made of particles, and particles have a dual nature. When you're observing them, they appear as particles, which have units of mass and energy. When you don't observe them, they disappear into waves. And waves have no location in space-time. So, what's the universe made of? The answer is we have no idea. And the only thing we can say is it's made of nothing. So, if it's made of nothing, why does it look like you and me and this microphone and the stars and the galaxies and rocks and animals and plants? That's called the hard problem of consciousness. We don't know. So after a lot of thought, I realized that the source of the universe, and now this is not a debated idea, the source of the universe, whatever we call it, is infinite. The universe is also infinite, or almost infinite. The physical universe that we observe with dark energy and all that. But the source is infinite. Now science calls that the singularity. And science calls that the superposition of particles, which is correct scientifically. But if you go to our Indian traditions, that source is the infinite that we call Brahman. And so it's actually not a superposition of particles, it's a superposition of possibilities of experience. Same thing. One is quantum, one is qualia. Quantum is measurement, qualia is experience. So it's the superposition of possibilities of experience is infinite, and it's a combination of zeros and ones. So what we call the universe, the visible universe, is a digital workshop outside space-time in something that is infinite. Whatever we call it. You can call it Brahman, you can call it singularity, it depends on your bias, materialistic bias or consciousness bias. So infinite creates the universe as a combination of zeros and ones. The difference between you and your brain and your body-mind and this chair and this microphone is just a different combination of zeros and ones. The universe is sourced in a digital workshop outside of space and time that manufactures not only our universe but possibly infinite universes just through zeros and ones. So I realized that the formula for creation is not E is equal to mc squared. It's infinity is equal to 0 is equal to 1. So infinity, if you take 1 divided by 0, you get infinite. So here we are. The infinite is producing this, which in Sanskrit is called Brahman. So the deeper reason for writing Digital Dharma is, so when we are looking for our place in the universe, which is Dharma, um, only digital technology will help you do it. Only digital technology. Now we have large language models. So, 40,000 years ago, humans deviated from the other species by creating a language for narrative, which we're using right now. But then we created languages like money, economics, history, biology, physics, mathematics, anthropology, religion, spirituality, all languages, by the way, they're languages. No one knows how language evolved. If you ask the Western world, no one knows how language evolved. In India, we say Saraswati and we get over it. So it's a divine gift, not from us, but from the source of the universe. So large language models now, which combine every possible human language, have access to the not only database, but the wisdom of humanity for the last 40,000 years since the cognitive revolution. And there's no human being, no Shakespeare, no Adi Shankara, nobody, no Rishi, who will have the access to the entire history of human thought in every language model that you can do. So this is a leapfrog in our biological evolution and our also social evolution. The first revolution from hunter-gatherers was the agricultural age, 12,000 years ago. Second, scientific revolution, 500 years ago. Age of technology, 100 years ago. Digital age, not even 30 years. It's leapfrogging. You will not be able to imagine what the human species will be in a few decades, I would dare to say. Because every experience you have, and now we have this access, it changes the neural landscape of your brain through epigenetic activity. You mentioned epigenetics, which is right now as we're speaking, this part of our brain is being activated genetically in the neural landscape. If you were televising this, then those people in Africa or everywhere, their neural landscape would be changing. So who are we? I mean, what is going on?
So what is the reality then?
There's no such thing. It's a human construct. Reality is infinite, which is incomprehensible, which is spaceless, which is timeless, which is borderless. So if it's borderless, it doesn't have a border, it's formless. As Tagore said, in the playhouse of infinite forms, the only thing you need to focus on is the formless. Because without the formless, which is infinite, there's no zeros and ones.
Next time my wife asks me something, I'll give this answer. But
sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry.
Fascinating.
We deviated.
With the wisdom you have and the experience you have, and this searching that you're still doing, it's interesting that you shared that. Many years back I was told that we know what we know, but we also know what we don't know, but there is another dimension. We don't even know what we don't know.
Yeah, but in philosophy that's called epistemology, the limitations of human knowing. Because our human brain has only evolved, the cortical brain has only evolved in the last maybe 15,000 to 20,000, again, because of language. Without language, we would have the same brain as a monkey. So all animals have a language, but we have language for creating these models, which then appear as reality, which of course in India we call Maya. But if you look at the word Maya, it's the same thing as matrix. Maya, matrix, time, matter, meter, music, mother, matrika. It's the same. It's the womb of creation. So it's the trickster that tells you this is the real world, but this is a simulation. This is a VR, and we are part of the VR. That's why VR also works. And the next revolution is not going to be pharmaceuticals. It's going to be first electroceuticals, then digiceuticals, and then metaceuticals, because we are already in the metaverse, which is Maya. We don't call it Maya, and it's fine. You can call it a simulation, you can call it a projection. If you're a yogi, you call it vrittis of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. But actually, there's no universe. It's a human construct.
You know, if the universe is so big, which it is not even comprehensible.
Can't.
Right? And in your book, you have a chapter, Put Your Ego on Notice. I mean, there's so much happening in the world. Look at what's happening in the Middle East. Do the leaders of the world need advice from both sages and scientists?
They do, but they're not ready to listen. So it's a waste of time. I don't waste my time on leaders of the world. We need leaders, we spend time on children because they're the future leaders.
So how does you're a leader, how do you put your ego on notice?
First, you realize that your ego is a fictional character. There's no such thing. It's a fictional. If I ask you, who are you? You give me your name, which is totally arbitrary. My mother chose to call me Deepak. She could have called me Sushil. Okay, and everything else is arbitrary. It's your history, what we call karma, basically. But karma, again, sounds very esoteric, so it's the conditioned mind. And we are all conditioned differently. Economics, social status, parents, religion, history. So we attach to certain things, we call it me. And it's fictional. It's an imaginary story. And all the conflict in the world is about imaginary stories. I'm Arab, you're Jewish, I'm Hindu, you're Muslim. It's all imagination. It's a story, basically. It's a model. It has no basis in fundamental reality, which is infinite. And what we call separation is actually differentiation. It's not the same thing. Separation creates anxiety, but differentiation creates culture. And right now we know if you want maximum diversity, and this is something leaders should know, but they don't, that if you have maximum diversity, you have shared vision, you complement each other's strengths, and you have some kind of an emotional or spiritual bond, you can solve any problem, and you can discover anything, So this is what we need right now. Maximum diversity of education, maximum diversity of gender, maximum diversity of race, maximum diversity of technology, maximum diversity of humanitarians, but most importantly, maximum diversity of storytellers, because the world is created by our stories. That's the only thing that differentiates human species from other species. We are storytellers. And Ramayana is a story. Okay, Mahabharata is a story. The Iliad is a story. The Homer story. Everything is a story. To be human is a story. And so right now our story is divisive. It's full of conflict. It is racist. It is bigoted. It is prejudiced. And it has no creativity whatsoever. It's a recycle. That's what karma is. You recycle the same story. And so karma becomes an algorithm of zeros and ones. You have to break the algorithm. Like Ramanujan, when he was asked, where do you get your theorems from? He said, I don't know. Saraswati gives me. Where do you get anything from? You don't know. Okay, so there's a theorem in mathematics called Gödel's theorem, where if you have a sufficient number of theorems that are logical, there's always a theorem that is illogical. It doesn't make sense. And it's a break in the algorithm. That, if the universe is mathematical, then the universe is creative, because mathematics always has breaks in logic. So that was Ramanujan's genius, which totally befuddled the greatest mathematicians. Bertrand Russell was totally nonplussed by Ramanujan. He didn't know how to explain. He said, where do you get these? He said, Saraswati rolled his eyes. Okay, the only people who understood this was, in the Western world, was Einstein to some extent, not completely, because Einstein was what they call a realist. He thought the world was real. And there's a very interesting conversation, actually, that most people are not aware of. When Rabindranath Tagore was traveling around the world after his Nobel Prize, Bertrand Russell actually went to his lecture and he reported in the Saturday Evening Post or something. He said, bullshit. It's usual nonsense. Because he was, an elitist British snob. But Einstein was smarter. He's invited Tagore to Berlin. This is before the war, the Second World War. And they had a conversation. And the conversation, which I've written about in my books, You Are the Universe, in the conversation, Einstein said there's the scientific universe and there's your universe in consciousness. And Tagore corrected him. He said, no, the scientific universe is also in consciousness. Theories are conceived in consciousness. Experiments are designed in consciousness. I'm not directly translating, but paraphrasing. But in the end, actually, Einstein conceded to Tagore. He said, science is my religion. It's another story. And it is a good story. But, we have forgotten some of these. We got so trapped by the success of materialism that we sacrificed wisdom for knowledge.
Absolutely. So is there any hope in Middle East?
Is there any hope in the world? I mean, we talk about climate change, talk about war in the Middle East, war in Ukraine, war and terrorism globally, social economic justice, radical differences in economic justice, if you want to call it that, chronic disease, mental depression. Unless we have a radical shift in our consciousness, we are sleepwalking to extinction. And I'm not saying that as a pessimist, I'm saying that as a realist. The way we are, in the United States, the conversation is so banal that people don't even, in the midst of all these hurricanes, there are still climate change deniers, in the US, and they still won't ratify the climate treaties, etc., or if Trump comes back.
He famously said, Trump said that climate change is a hoax.
Yeah.
I mean, he's wrong about a lot of things. This one is definitely wrong.
No, but he doesn't say things that he might even know what he's talking about. In 1990s, early 1990s, I, along with another woman who was a close friend of mine, we did a full-page New York Times ad on climate change. And we had Trump sign it. He signed it. He said, yes, you're right. So, he doesn't know what
he's a pragmatist.
I think he's cognitively declined.
Okay. He should come to your longevity workshop.
He wouldn't pass the test to enter.
Now, staying on the digital dharma, you talk about journaling, and using chatbots for journalism, right? Of course, that is marrying the old age practice of journaling with technology. Give us a sense of why journaling in the era of chatbots is still so cathartic.
You see, when I said journaling, I used the word for everyday consumers, if you want to call them that. But journaling is a way for reflection. Contemplation. Inquiry. And the highest inquiry is what we call Atma Vichar. Who am I? What is, the basis of existence? But now, because we have these emotional chatbots, I can ask these questions and get an answer from Ramana Maharishi, or Vivekananda, or Aurobindo, or Buddha, or Mahavir, or Jesus Christ, and then I can make my own decision. Not that I have to buy their own, but now I can build on the shoulders of all these great thought leaders or luminaries that have existed for 40,000 years. So that's why that chapter.
Now, also, we are doing this. We could have done this over Zoom. We are doing this face to face. I shook your hand, I talked to you, I looked at your body language. What about human touch? And again, you've talked about the science of molecules, oxytocin, and when you touch, it produces a certain chemicals which create a positive emotion, if I may use that. So how do you remain human-centric in the era of technology, AI, and bots?
Once you understand that, you see, technology is what, there are only two things that make us different from other species. The first is language, narrative, create models, because without language we wouldn't have science or philosophy or anything, science. All this multiple, the AI is a language model, as you know. But because we have an opposable thumb, we deviated from monkeys. We started making tools. We made a hammer. You can kill a person with a hammer, but in the hands of a carpenter, it's an amazing tool. We made a knife. You can kill a person with a knife, but in the hands of a surgeon, it heals. We created fire. It can burn down a forest, but you can't have your cuisine today. And you wouldn't, in fact, if we hadn't discovered fire, you wouldn't have the industrial age. You wouldn't have the steam engine. So every step of the way, we are tool makers. That is the origin of the word technology. And the universe is a technology workshop. So we're not there yet with the immersive experience. But as soon as we extend, see, AI, and my CEO of Punacha is an expert, more than I am, but AI is just the beginning. You're soon going to have ambient AI, you're going to have VR, you're going to have XR, you're going to have MR, you're going to have AR, which is all extensions of the Maya, basically. And we are part of the Maya. And actually, you will be able to have an experience as good as this. In fact, we did a conference in Florida 3 years ago, where I was in Florida, and who was that actress?
Fast and Furious.
Huh?
Fast and Furious.
A very famous actress. She was in LA, and you couldn't tell the difference. We were sitting like you and me. And of course, the touch part is missing right now. But that also, with what is called haptics, is going to there. So in a few years, you and me could have this experience totally with all the five senses, which is what we experience. As we call it reality, but it's a combination of five senses, five qualias, that makes the difference between everything.
Now, you always said that, when someone comes to you for coaching, which you do much lesser than you used to, you do more workshops and more retreats because you can make a larger impact. You said the questions one must ask oneself is, what is my purpose? What do I enjoy? Is it getting me closer to a goal? And in the book also you talk about, in chapter 4, the art of the prompt. In AI, prompts are like asking questions to yourself. So give us a sense of how can we do the right prompts, and how can we ask the right question, and what are the right questions to ask?
It depends on you. You see, if we look at the hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow, everybody gives credit to Abraham Maslow, no question. He was one of the greatest transpersonal psychologists, but he spoke about five levels of needs. Now, what most people don't know, that before he died, in his notes, he was going beyond self-actualization to self-transcendence. So what Abraham Maslow created the whole world of transpersonal psychology based on the hierarchy of needs is basically the 7 chakras. Okay, the first chakra is about survival and safety. The second chakra is about sensual experience. The third is transformation and power. The fourth is love and belongingness. The fifth is creative expression. The sixth is insight, intuition, imagination. And the seventh is transcendence. That's what humans... So what is dharma? It's your best life possible, ultimately leading to transcendence. Fulfill every level of need. So depending on what you're looking for, you can ask the right prompt. Okay, the prompt, the question embodies the answer. And the answer is available through the wisdom of humanity that has preceded us and is continuing to evolve and will continue to evolve. If there's one thing that's real, it's evolution. But evolution keeps pace just a little ahead of entropy. Now again, I like to go back to our culture because it's all been explained. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, right? So you have the infinite creator, you have the sustainer, and you have the destroyer. That's entropy, creativity, and sustenance, basically. So if you understand that the mechanics always is that the entropy is slightly behind, not too much, slightly behind. That's why we see the chaos right now. Maybe it's a transition point. When water starts to boil, becomes steam, there's a lot of turbulence. So anytime there's what is called a transition in an ecosystem, and this time we're talking about the whole planet as an ecosystem, there are entropic forces. And where this goes is unpredictable because that's also a principle of quantum mechanics, quantum uncertainty. And that's why we have creativity without uncertainty. If creation was an algorithm only, then there would be nothing for you and me to do. But if creation is punctuated by leaps of creativity, we could be at a transition point. And it doesn't actually matter if there are 2 trillion galaxies, then Karma Bhumi, or planet Earth, is one little speck of one grain.
You make us think.
By the way, in Yoga Vasishtha, there's a phrase, and there are Pandits here who are much more, Sampananji and even Pandeji, they know much more than I do in their own domain. But in Yoga Vasishtha, there's one sutra: infinite universes come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness like motes of dust in a beam of light. So Vasishtha is sitting in his cave looking at a beam of light coming through the roof, and he sees these motes of dust. He says there are infinite universes like this. Current mathematics suggests that there are infinite universes.
Beautiful, you make us think. You've been talking of integrative medicines for almost 5 decades, and almost 4 decades back, at the age of 45, you gave up your medical practice, if I may say, and then you went to a humanistic practice or a consciousness practice, whatever word you want to use. We use labels in life to make it simple. And what is the future of medicine and health? Is it Ayurveda? Is it AI and Ayurveda coming together? It's clearly not hospitals. It's not.
The future, well, just to look at what our current science is, less than 5% of chronic disease is due to what are called fully penetrant genes, which means they guarantee the disease. So if somebody has a BRCA gene that's for breast cancer, they're going to get breast cancer. Angelina Jolie, the actress, she had the BRCA gene, and she had preventive mastectomy because otherwise she would have gotten breast cancer. I'm giving that example, but that is true of every disease. Every disease, about 5%, or probably less, 4 to 5%. We had actually a hearing in Congress on this in the United States with my co-author, Rudy Tanzi. Less than 5% of disease is guaranteed by genetic mutations. So mutation is a genetic error. It's a spelling mistake in the DNA or the nucleotides. And for that, by the way, there's a revolution too. We just had a conference 2 weeks ago. Sumant Kulkarni is an Indian-American geneticist who is the head of the CRISPR project. So he's already figured it out. You can cut and paste genes like you cut and paste your email. So you can, metaphorically speaking, you can read the barcode of a gene, delete it, put the right gene, voila, the disease is cured. But that's less than 5%. 95% is epigenetic, which means above the genes there's a sheath of proteins, and these proteins are called histones, and DNA is wrapped around them. So imagine that this is a histone and DNA is wrapped around that. Every experience changes the gene activity. So imagine a computer above this room and it knew what you needed. And this room was your house. You went to the kitchen, it would turn on your microwave. You went into your bedroom, it would turn off the lights because it knew you how to sleep. You went into the living room, it turned on the TV set. So that's epigenetics. The consciousness is the master computer that is regulating your body depending on your needs. Eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, sensory experience, thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, anxiety, stress, everything affects gene activity. This is only 20 years old with the science. Furthermore, less than 1% of your genes are human. So you have 25,000 genes, half from your mother, half from your father. But you have 2 million bacterial genes, which are from the soil, which we are ruining, by the way, with industrial food production. 1 teaspoon of soil under the Amazon has more microbial diversity than the entire planet. 1 teaspoon. And that's the source of life. So the source of life is bacteria. And you have in your body what we call millions, 20 to, depending on where you live, urban, contaminated, forest, whatever, you have millions of bacterial genes. So between the bacterial genes, the epigenetic activity, your genes, and then what time do you sleep, what time do you eat, your biological rhythms, as I said, eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, sensory experience, mental experience, emotional experience, relationships, they all modulate your gene activity. So the future is, you take the principles of Ayurveda is very good because it's a qualia medicine. It's not a quantum medicine. Qualia means quality of experience. You regulate your body through daily season routines, through the right food, through panchakarma, through rasayana. That is very good, but it's not enough, okay? It's not enough. You have to actually look much more at what science is telling us about how these genes are altered. And because we have technology, right now I'm wearing about 5 sensors. Some you can't see. So right now, as I'm speaking to you, my heart rate is being monitored, my heart rate variability, galvanic skin response, last night's peace, and blood sugar, everything is being monitored. And with the technology, the way it's going, it will know in a moment, live, what you're doing that is disturbing your homeostasis right now, and what you can do in the moment to correct it. So we conduct these longevity retreats because right now, the fastest growing segment of the human population, fastest growing, you won't know this unless you look up the data, is over the age of 100. That means more people are living longer, but unfortunately they're getting Alzheimer's, they're getting heart disease, they're getting all kinds of diseases. People don't die of old age, they die of disease. Of course, they die of old age too. There's something called the Hayflick limit, which says about 120 years is after that the genes stop replicating or the cells stop dividing. Even that may be premature, but we know theoretically. And also you see people 120s.
Hardly.
You do see, they're documented. Japan, India.
In the blue zone,
Yeah, in the blue zones. So you see that. So it's not longevity, it's health span. How long can you live healthy? Now, of course, in our tradition, we say you should choose your death through Mahasamadhi. Now we think, some rishis were able to achieve that. But there's a science now which says you should be able to do that. If you can tackle the 5% through gene editing, and you can tackle the others through what we call lifestyle, basically it's lifestyle. But now there's nothing that is not measurable. Anything that experience you have, you can measure it. So I think the future of well-being is very promising if we don't blow it up with a nuclear war or something like that. The future of well-being is very promising. It's personalized, it's predictive, it's participatory, it's preventive, it's even reversible. Heart disease and all these things are reversible.
Yes. Now, you said something very, very important, which is about the quality of life. You know, you said in your books that it's also the environment in which. And there's stress for everyone. There's stress for performance, because we benchmark, we're in the era of social media. Stress is a good thing or a bad thing?
I'll share a story with you. So, 1980 or so, I was at a conference at Harvard with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and the conference was on stress. And there were all these experts, Benson and all the people talking about the biology of stress. And after everybody left, Maharishi called me and he whispered in my ear, "Kya hai ye stress? What are they talking about?" I said, "They're talking about stress." He says, "Kya hai? What is it?" I said, "It's perception of threat, psychological threat, financial threat in relationship." And he thought for a while, and he said, "You mean resistance to existence?" And I thought that was absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. When you resist what's happening in the moment, you're stressed. But right now, what is there to be stressed about unless you're thinking about in the future, right? Something in the past. Does now have any stress?
Yeah, I was thinking when I don't have the Perrier I was supposed to get for you, Mr. Bakshi. When that's the honest thing.
So, there's also people these days, it's become a meme, live in the present moment. But, as soon as you say live in the present moment, that's time. Okay, that's time. So, present moment is not presence. Presence is the infinite in every moment, which is consciousness, which is awareness, and it's absolutely, totally homeostatic. It's like samadhi. Okay, so in samadhi, there's no arrow of time. That is another thing. And all this longevity research, people are talking about longevity molecules and this and that, but nobody's talking about how do we metabolize not only food, we metabolize every experience. You're metabolizing this experience right now. Then you'll metabolize food. Then you'll watch a Bollywood movie. You'll metabolize that. You'll be thinking about that. Who did what to whom, etc., etc. So we metabolize experience, but that in which we metabolize experience is consciousness, which is infinite. So if you bring consciousness to the fore, there's no entropy of time. So again, Yoga Vaishishta, or one of these great scriptures, time is the consumer and we are its food. We are time's food. So the slower you experience time, and right now the world is on time sickness. Mere paas time nahi hai. I'm running out of time. If you are continuously saying that, your internal dialogue will speed up, your biological metabolism will speed up, your body clock will speed up, your platelets will get jittery. If you have a heart attack, you run out of time. You're just saying, "I'm running out of time." Of course you're running out of time because you believe that there is something called time. But in consciousness, there's no time. It's presence. That's it. And let me ask somebody, let me make this clearer if you give me permission. Are you all enjoying this conversation? A little more enthusiasm, please. Okay. Now let me ask you the same question, but do not answer it till I raise my hand. Okay? Same question, but don't answer it. Are you enjoying this conversation? So the question is a mental event. The answer is a mental event. In between is you, consciousness. It is constantly overshadowed by the mind. But okay, try it again. This time, if I say, "Are you enjoying this?" Just slip into it. In this consciousness, there's no time. Okay, that's why Rumi said, "God's language is silence. Everything else is poor translation." So slip into the silence between the internal dialogue. That's samadhi, right now. You don't have to sit in a cave. There's questions. Somebody has a question.
Yeah, we'll take the question. Mr. Dadu is a former bureaucrat, writes for Businessworld on economics and business. Definitely will bring you in. So you're saying you can increase the quality of your life by slowing down?
In yoga, we don't count life. We have a lot of yogis here. You don't count life in the number of years. You count life in the number of breaths and the number of heartbeats. Yogastha kuru karmani. Stay in that silence, perform action. Same thing as karma yoga.
Beautiful. You also have a chapter in the book called Bend and Bounce Back. I found
resilience.
Resilience, it's simply resilience. But why don't you expound on that in the way you do?
Again, yogic literature says infinite flexibility is the secret of immortality. So the flexibility is not just of the body, because body is just a expression of consciousness. See, once again, people, in all the language, in all the conferences on mind body, the essential problem is language. People they speak about different things, okay? So if you ask somebody to define the mind, they can't even tell you that, in science, there's no good definition of mind. Now, there is a good definition. The mind is an embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information in an ecosystem of living minds. The mind is a process. The mind is not here. It's a process. You say, where is the mind? It has no location. It's a process. It's in your body, it's in your brain, it's in our relationships. So it's embodied and relational. That's the mind. What is the body? It's a perceptual activity in the mind. There's no body unless you experience it through the mind. How do you experience it? Through the five senses. So the body is not a material object, it's a process also. And then mind, intellect, and ego are what we call sukshma sharir, okay, the subtle body. This is called sthul sharir, the prana and physical body. But they're both illusions, okay? The source is what we call jivatma, or you want to call it consciousness, or you go even beyond that, pure consciousness. Para, pashanti, beyond that, all that. That is the superposition of possibilities. That's the infinite. So, bounce back means resilience in the body through yogic practice, which is called yoga asana. The reason it's called yoga asana, asana means seat. Seat of what? Awareness, of consciousness. So every yoga asana is a seat of consciousness, if we teach it properly, okay? And every yoga, see, in Patanjali, there's a very clear sequence, yama, niyama. So yama is social intelligence, niyama is emotional intelligence. And then straight, yoga asana, because this is easy to control, with movement, done with awareness. Then third, immediately, is pranayama, because pranayama, the breath is the connection between consciousness and biology and mind. Breath connects consciousness to mind and body. And so pranayama, and then immediately pratyahara, which is going to the source through withdrawal of the senses. Today we call it interoception. And then, only then, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, which is the culmination. So resilience is resilience in consciousness, top-down approach. Okay, and if you do that, you bend and bounce back.
Beautiful, Dr. Chopra. You clearly believe in integrative well-being, if I may use the term. you have the background and the experience to be able to integrate that. But today there is a lot of toxic positivity on Instagram. There are many fake gurus, if I may say, or half-baked, definitely. What do you have to say that? I mean, is there a quick fix formula for stress, for relationships, for hope? What is your comment on that?
First of all, talking about fake, we are all fake. We are all authentic fakes. It depends on what level of fakery you are. Okay. So there is, if we were not fakes, we wouldn't be having all these ideas and saying showmanship and who's better, who's worse, who has more money, who has more weapons. So first of all, we are for stress. And is there an instant cure? And the instant cure is once you realize that it's all a show, you don't take it seriously. You know, there's a grave site I visited some time ago, and there was a beautiful sign on the grave site. It said, "Where you are, I was. Where I am, you soon will be." Okay. So once you recognize that, you don't take life seriously. You know, we have beautiful words in our language. Maya is the show, and Leela is the play. And you say, why do children play? Well, they love to play, you know. You can't get Tagore. In this playhouse of infinite forms, I found the formless, but then there's another poem in Gitanjali. On the seashore of worlds, children play. Fishermen serve and fish, boats get sunk, wars happen, and children play. They build castles, they throw them away, and they build them again. And so we have forgotten how to play. So now all the thing is, how do we treat depression? How do we think? I would say play. I mean, and play is not a game, because game is you want to win. You know, there's a purpose. In play, there's only creative joy. So I think the solution to stress is creative joy. And today, in fact, what we really need is a pandemic of joy right now. It's the only thing we need. And then we don't have to worry about this. And creativity is so fundamental in the, you know, when we say God, what do we mean? Creator, right? You can't create if you're serious. You know, you'll get a headache. So that's why, again, in this process of creativity, there's something called incubation. First, there's intended outcome. Then there's information gathering, then there's information analysis, then there's incubation. That is creative play. Whether you do yoga or whatever, or listen to music, then there is insight, and then there is implementation, then there is inspiration. So creative play is both death and resurrection. You cannot have creativity without fundamental change in story. What we need right now is a new story, new context, new meaning, and new relationships, and an ecosystem of maximum diversity with shared vision. It can happen. We have a course, by the way. Let me promote our course. It's called The Soul of Leadership, which I taught for 14 years at Columbia and Business School and also at Kellogg. And in 2 weeks or so, it'll be online, so you can do it online with all the instructions and so on. Creativity is the solution, and creative play is the solution. Unless we totally have a death of the old paradigm, and has happened periodically, you know, dinosaurs wiped out.
Evolution, you talked about evolution.
Evolution happens.
Dr. Chopra,
I congratulate him. He's read the book very thoroughly.
I like reading books. So
Yeah.
it's easy.
Seriously, you are bringing up things in the book which I had forgotten.
But again, in the book, you talk about that wholeness is the ultimate healing. How does one achieve wholeness?
See, in our science, current science is what we call reductionist science. See, you know, you say, okay, what is atoms, what are matter made of? Molecules. What is molecules made of? Atoms. What are particles, atoms made of? Particles. Till you get to the most fundamental level, and it all disappears. It becomes possibilities. So when you want to actually create something totally new, you have to get rid of every other story. Reductionism is you know more and more without knowing the rest. You have to ignore everything. If I want to know what is going in I'm a specialist, cardiologist. You're a neurologist. You're a gastroenterologist. Unless we communicate, I don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. The body is not just the heart or the stomach or the nervous system. It's all of them functioning together. How does a human body think thoughts, play a piano, kill germs, remove toxins, make a baby all at the same time? All at the same time. It's not one thing. That's wholeness. Your body is doing eating, breathing, digesting, metabolism, thinking, and tracking the universe as its biological rhythms. You're a cosmic computer right now. That is wholeness. So again, in Sanskrit, the word is avidya. Avidya means ignorance. You have to ignore everything else to know this. So wholeness is getting rid of avidya.
Being present.
And allowing. Last niyama, Ishwar Pranidhana, however you define it. Reality is incomprehensible. Just surrender to it.
Beautiful. Dr. Chopra, we are 10 days away from your 78th birthday. You're young.
You mean chronologically, not biologically.
Sure. Sure. You achieved so much impact. I think you enjoy what you do. Confucius said you make your hobby your profession. In your case, your training as a doctor and then the evolution to who you are today. You achieved everything. Impact, experiences, fame, and all the other material things. Is there something else for Dr. Chopra to achieve?
Yes, and that is our current science is incomplete. It only deals with what we call the object of observation. It doesn't deal with the modes of knowing, and it doesn't address the observer. So in every experience, there are three components: observer, observation, observed; knower, knowing, known; seer, scenery, seeing. So science isn't complete. So my goal right now for the remaining years of my life is at least lay the groundwork for a more complete science, which includes observer, observed, and observation, which means that unless we bring consciousness into the scientific world, we are basically dealing with a science that is so incomplete that it could lead to our extinction. See, we have modern capacities and we have medieval minds. We still have medieval minds.
So we got to upgrade that.
You have to upgrade that, otherwise modern technology will destroy us. That's a genuine fear.
My last question before I bring in the audience, it's a very accomplished, eclectic audience, and we've kept a lot of time for Q&A, so we'll bring all of you in. You talk about well-being for the last 35 years that I've been following you. Possibly you've been talking about it earlier. And you talked about the components of well-being in almost everything you've done. Is there a modern mantra to well-being? Of course, sleep is part of that. Nutrition, movement, consciousness.
Yeah, I think it's, if you have the right intention, which we call sankalp, then well-being is a joyful, energetic body, a loving, compassionate heart, a creative, quiet mind, and lightness of spirit. That's the formula.